On this episode of Pitbike Mods, we're going to install BBR Super Stock extended swing arm on the 2019 KLX110L.
First, we'll use an 8mm socket to take off the chain guard. Now put a rag in between the chain and the sprocket and we'll take off the chain master link. I like to use a flathead screwdriver and a hammer. Now we'll take off the kickstarter, brake pedal and brake rod. With that all done, we can loosen the rear axle and take off the brake torque arm. Use a set of pliers to take out the cotter pin. Now with the axle removed, we can take out the rear wheel. That done, we can take out the lower shock bolt. Now we can take out the swing arm pivot bolt.
I recommend you're putting a breaker bar there, leans on the foot peg where it holds when you try to break the nut loose.
You can use a hammer and screwdriver to knock out the swing arm pivot bolt.
This is BBR's first generation of super stock style swing arms, the A style swing arms. The new generation, which BBR just released, the BBR.com swing arm, is only 1.75 inches longer than stock swing arm. This is 2.5 inches. So this is a bit longer than stock. Another difference is this model doesn't have the brake tab. A lot of people like running it for they can run the KX65 rear brake and wheel. This one doesn't have it, but I've seen some people modify them and put a brake block there. Another thing is they don't have an extendable shock mount like on the newer models. That's not a big problem because this is an L model, so it doesn't really matter. But other than that, it's pretty good. A lot of people prefer these over the newer models. They look my preference is I think they look a little bit better, more modern style, but personal preference, and the length is a little bit longer, so there's a positive from that as well. The good thing about the BBR swing arm, it's beefier, stronger, it's not going to break on you like the stock swing arm. If you're going to go off a big jump, the stock swing arm's not going to hold up. The good thing about the BBR has big bike axle block, so it's going to be easy to adjust the chain, and a lot of people have problems with these chain adjusters. They keep on snapping and bending off, so it's a good upgrade going to the BBR. I see a lot of questions about this. Can you put the BBR KLX110 chain guide onto the BBR Super Stock swing arms? No, you can't. The thing is, the swing arm is designed for a CRF 50 chain guide. It's a little bit smaller, as you can see. The thing is, the chain on the stock swing arm runs a little bit lower than on the super stock swing arm, so you need to run the CRF on the super stock swing arm. Another thing is the bolts where it lines up, it's a little bit wider than on the CRF one, so you have to go CRF, you can't go KLX. You can try to modify it to make it work, but BBR recommend to run a CRF 50 chain guide.
Make sure you grease up the pivot bolt, rear axle and lower shock bolt. First we'll start out by putting the pivot bolt in. Put the nut on and we'll torque it down to spec later on.
Before you put the shock bolt in, make sure the swing arm moves freely.
Now we can put the lower shock bolt in.
There's a washer that goes on the left hand side. Snuggle the bolts down, and then afterwards we'll torque everything down. Torque the shock bolt to 29 foot-pounds. Torque the swing arm pivot bolt to 58 foot-pounds. Just wanted to show you guys a quick tip. So when the rear brake comes from factory, the brake arm, the arm that opens the brake before it locks up, is down. A lot of the adult riders, they like to flip the brake arm the other way, because usually this gets stuck in a rut and then the brakes always activate. So all you have to do when the brake is off the bike, flip this around. Now this, when it pulled, it actually activates properly.
Now we can put in the rear axle. Make sure the axle adjusters are centered in the axle positioning, or we can get the most out of our chain adjustment.
There's a letter R marked on the brake rod, make that the rear. After the brake rod's on, leave it loose. Now we'll tighten up the rear axle. Make sure both axle blocks are exactly on the same line. Push firmly up against the axle blocks and torque down the wheel. Now you can tighten up the brake arm.
Now we can put our CRF50 chain guide on. This one uses Allen head bolts, but some others use hex bolts.
We're going to be using the Pro Taper 420 MX chain. So let's take it out of the packaging, line it up, see where we need to cut it, and we'll go from there.
Before we cut the chain, we'll put it on the bike, see where we need to cut, mark it out, and then we can use a chain breaker or angle grinder to cut off the excess chain. I used an angle grinder to cut off the excess chain, then I just use a hammer and flathead screwdriver to break the chain loose. Now we can put the master link on. Make sure the master link open end is facing backwards.
Make sure the master link, the opening is going the opposite way of the direction of the chain.
I just put a rag in between the chain and sprocket and use that flathead screwdriver and hammer to hit the master link on.
Now we just need to cut the brake rod, because when we put the extension on it doesn't really line up too well, so we have to cut the OEM brake rod. So what I did is I put that brake, the nut adjuster all the way on, put the brake rod extension on, put some masking tape, no, screw it all the way on, put masking tape where to cut. Now we'll take it off, cut that off. It's only a little bit, we'll test it. If it's not enough, we'll cut some more. But now we'll cut it, and then this screw, when we take it off, the threads will be perfect and we won't struggle to put this on. So let's cut it with the angle grinder. You just need to put the brake arm on, but first I like to put a bit of grease on the brake arm pivot arm for it doesn't get locked up. Also with the Sikk 110 pedal, I like to put 3 washers to space it out, because actually it just touches the engine cases and it's just best to space it out. It touches the side glass, the engine, the kickstand and kickstarter and everything, so it's best to just put a couple of washers there.
Use a pick or pliers to put the brake pedal spring on.
I like to put a bit of Loctite on the bolt that holds the brake arm on, because you can't actually tighten the brake bolt too much. If you do, this won't pivot. Just need to find that sweet spot so it's able to spring back. See there, it's a little bit too tight. Bring it back, but you want that spring feeling. That's good. We also need to cut the spring down where it just fits over the extension brake arm. I'm going to cut it too short at first. Cut it there. Test it out. Is all on, brake is all adjusted. It's really good. Try not to have too much play. You want a little bit. Pretty much to the point where the brake pads don't touch the wheel when it spins. Now we just need to put the Kickstarter on. Perfect. The BBR Super Stock Swingarm is all bolted up, fits very nicely. The product is top quality. If you ever end up finding one, go grab it. It is worth the money. It fits perfectly, makes the bike handle so much better, looks hectic. BBR is a great company that really support the Pitbike community, and if you ever find one, grab it. It'll be worthwhile. I've got a couple of more parts coming from America, some dress up kits, looking at getting black wheels soon, so stay tuned. Let me know what you want to see in the next couple of videos, and I'll see you next time.